one of the challenges that we are thinking about today is the idea of living in a multi-ethnic society. Brazil, the US, and other countries in the Americas were created out of a multi-ethnic, right? Diverse populations, and all this during the colonial era. How do you approach multiculturalism in our community involvement efforts? And are there tools that you see that can be used across borders?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that people fail to see or recognize is that from a perspective of biodiversity, the more diverse the environment, the more diverse the group, the more diverse the voices feeding into a solution, the more creative, productive, intelligent is the response. And so we think one thing is one thing, but the truth of the matter is this goes back hundreds of years to our ancestors who were all on this one ship. And I'm going to tell you, my ears, I didn't become a writer until I went to Bahia and my ears were opened. And it was like somebody unplugged my ears and I was hearing things and seeing things. And if you see in my house, it looks like an explosion of the world. And that multicultural approach lends itself to a much, much better expression of the arts, of intelligence, of creativity. The thing that I know that has been shackled is the voices of people who were shackled. We all came over on this boat and were brought to all of the Americas under this guise that we were somehow inferior, biologically inferior. We moved from there to you're no longer biologically inferior, you're just mentally inferior. Oh, okay, it's not that you're mentally inferior, you are just not trying hard enough. Now it's not that you don't try hard enough, you know, that was a long time ago, and when are you gonna stop talking about it? I did my dissertation on colorism, Black on Black discrimination based on color differences. That didn't come from within the group, it came from outside of the group, from the colonialism, from the enslavement, from all of those things. And so they had an impact on how we treat each other. But the reason I was studying it was because when you could understand these divides that happen within groups, you could better understand the division across groups. And it's easier then to build community. What we keep trying to do is take down the entire sky. But we're only responsible for the sky within our head and the sky with where we live and work and have our being. You all have taken on this sky of imprisonment, particularly women in prison. This issue is the same issue everywhere, and especially for women of color. They're there for three reasons: domestic violence, somebody's boyfriend or husband did something with some drugs and they got involved with it, and trying to feed their children. It's the same thing in all of these places. And when we begin to seek solutions and ways out, finding the arts and the crafts and something that you can put your hands to, this is a multicultural response. And one thing I know for certain, and two I know for sure, is that in the South Americas, that's where the arts explode. In the rest of the world, we don't give it enough credit. We surely don't give it enough voice. We don't do it here. We don't do it there. But I see when I go to prisons to work, you know, I like to say, you know, I grew up in the prisons, just working there and hearing and finding my voice, but also listening and hearing the stories of how people would get there. And then I'd be, you know, a few years later at a university and somebody would come up and say, oh, I met you before. And I say, well, where? And they'd say, at college. And I go, what college? And they'd name a prison. But they'd say, so-and-so university. In other words, I met you there, but you inspired me and now I'm here. Our diversity is the best thing we have to offer. But somebody has convinced us that the differences are the thing that divide. No, you cannot do critical thinking with one thought. It's the negation of the negation of the negation of the negation that brings forth the best of all possible worlds. Or as my mother would say it, inbreeding does not give birth to genius. So the more we come together like this, the more we evolve.